Not long ago, everyday life in Britain looked completely different. People did things that would shock us today, yet at the time no one thought twice. From smoking in hospitals to children riding without seatbelts, the past was full of habits that now seem unthinkable. Stick around, because we're counting down some of the most surprising everyday practices from Britain's not-so-distant past, and how quickly society decided to change them. Dogs roaming freely. In the 1960s and 70s, British streets often echoed with barks and tapping paws. Dogs roamed wherever they pleased. No leashes, no fences, no strict rules. Some were strays, others were family pets on their daily adventures. Shopkeepers left out water bowls and children shared snacks with them in parks. Accidents happened, fights broke out, but few people complained. It was seen as part of everyday life. By the 1980s, new leash, registration and microchipping laws curbed that freedom in the name of safety and control. Today, an unleashed dog on a city street turns heads, a glimpse of a past when freedom came first. But if you think pet rules were strict, wait until you hear what discipline once looked like in the armed forces. Corporal punishment in the army. Boots once stomped in rhythm across cold barracks floors at dawn. Even after public flogging vanished from civilian life, the British Army still carried its sting. Physical discipline remained deeply rooted. Slaps, lashes, and punishing drills designed to break a soldier's defiance and rebuild him in the image of obedience. For generations, commanders believed fear bred loyalty. Harsh treatment was viewed as essential for maintaining order and respect. Complaints were rare, and recruits were told to endure it as part of becoming a man. But by the late 20th century, growing awareness of human rights and professionalism began to change military culture. Formal discipline, training, and leadership replaced pain as the path to respect. Today, the idea of striking a soldier feels barbaric, a relic of another era. Yet beyond the barracks, civilian life had its own extremes. On Britain's streets, freedom, of the four-legged kind, still ran wild. Open-air slaughter of animals. At dawn, the smell of hay and iron once filled village markets across Britain. Animals were slaughtered in courtyards, fields, and even on cobbled streets, an everyday sight that few found unusual. For many families, it was part of life. Butchers worked in the open, children fetched water, and blood ran into the gutters as neighbours watched. It wasn't seen as cruel, it was survival, tradition, and necessity. By the mid-20th century, attitudes began to shift. Public health campaigns warned of contamination, and new animal welfare laws pushed slaughter behind closed doors. Hygiene and regulation replaced habit and spectacle. Today, the idea of witnessing such scenes in public feels almost unthinkable, a reminder of how far standards have come. But if you think those rules ended in markets, wait until you hear what children were once trusted to do entirely on their own. Unregulated street food. On Britain's bustling streets, it was once completely normal to buy food from vendors with little oversight. Hot pies, fried fish, and sizzling snacks filled the air with rich aromas. Sold from wooden carts or makeshift stalls, there were no hygiene certificates, refrigeration units, or safety inspections, just trust between the seller and the crowd. Locals enjoyed the convenience and flavour, rarely questioning where the ingredients came from or how they were handled. But as public health awareness grew, authorities introduced strict licensing and food safety laws. Markets modernised and open-air cooking slowly faded behind cleaner, regulated systems. What was once casual and carefree became tightly controlled. Yet even as Britain cleaned up its food scene, life still held risks far greater than a street snack. Habits involving children, alcohol, and surprising household rules few would believe today. Children playing on roads. Sunlight once bounced off quiet roads as laughter echoed between parked cars. Children played tag, rode bikes, and kicked footballs right in the middle of the street. No helmets, no warning cones, no boundaries. Traffic was light, neighbours kept a casual eye out, and parents trusted kids to look after themselves. It was a time when freedom outweighed fear, and scraped knees were just part of growing up. As car ownership boomed through the 1970s and 80s, streets grew busier and safety laws tightened. Local councils built playgrounds and parks, moving childhood adventure off the roads. The open streets of yesterday became zones of caution and rules. Today, the thought of children playing among traffic feels unthinkable, a vanished kind of freedom. But if street games sound risky, the next chapter steps into workplaces where adults once indulged in something even bolder, drinking on the job. Workplace smoking rooms. Not long ago, cigarette smoke was as common in offices as coffee cups. Factories, banks, and even government buildings often had dedicated smoking rooms where employees gathered throughout the day. Thick clouds of smoke hung in the air as colleagues chatted, brainstormed, and lit up between tasks. Ashtrays overflowed, curtains yellowed, and the smell of tobacco clung to every surface. Few questioned the risks. Smoking was part of professional culture, a social break rather than a health concern. But as scientific evidence on secondhand smoke mounted, public attitudes shifted sharply. By the late 20th century, new health and safety laws banned indoor smoking entirely, replacing ashtrays with no smoking signs. Today, the idea of lighting up inside an office feels almost absurd, a relic of a different era. Yet while workplaces cleared the air, other freedoms of daily life remained far more hazardous. The next story takes us into an age when safety on the roads was little more than an afterthought. Bonfire night without supervision. Under dark winter skies, rockets soared and bangers crackled, filling quiet streets with smoke and sparks. Children wandered freely, pocket money in hand, buying fireworks as easily as candy. Gardens and backyards turned into arenas of light and chaos. Scorched grass, singed fingers, and startled neighbours were all part of the fun. Parents often watched from doorsteps, trusting judgment, courage, and a little luck. Accidents happened, but the thrill outweighed the risk. By the 1970s and 80s, growing safety concerns prompted change. Age limits, ID checks, and stricter handling rules transformed fireworks from free-for-all spectacle to regulated tradition. Chaos gradually gave way to caution. Today, unsupervised fireworks feel unthinkable. But while pyrotechnics became controlled, other freedoms, in workplaces, streets, and homes, still pushed boundaries in ways modern society would never allow. Unlicensed street markets. In decades past, street markets were chaotic hubs of trade, alive with noise, smells, and motion. Vendors sold fresh produce, baked goods, snacks, and household items with almost no oversight. Licenses were rare, health inspections non-existent, and food often prepared and served in open-air stalls. Crowds moved freely between carts, bargaining loudly and enjoying the energy of the bustling markets. Trust between seller and buyer was implicit, and safety or quality concerns were rarely questioned. By the mid-20th century, new regulations and licensing rules transformed these markets. Stalls became cleaner, inspections ensured safety, and open-air unpredictability faded. What was once informal and carefree became structured and controlled. Today, the idea of unregulated street markets feels almost alien. But while markets were tamed, other freedoms of daily life, involving children, roads, and play, remained surprisingly risky. The next story shows just how casual society once was about letting kids explore the world on their own. Alcohol sales to minors. In Britain's streets of the past, it was common for parents to send children to the local shop with a note requesting beer, cider, or even spirits. The child handed over money and the note, and shopkeepers rarely questioned it. This simple errand was seen as harmless, a small act of trust between families and community merchants. Children felt responsible and grown up, carrying bottles home as easily as bread or milk. By the mid-20th century, stricter laws on alcohol sales and age restrictions ended the practice. Safety, accountability, and public awareness became the new priority. Today, the idea of a minor running such errands would likely prompt legal intervention. Yet while alcohol sales were controlled, other everyday freedoms remained surprisingly risky. The next story shows how adults themselves once enjoyed liberties that would shock modern workplaces. Dangerous children's toys. In past decades, children played with toys that would alarm parents today. Metal yo-yos, bright plastic clackers, and other gadgets clicked, crashed, and sometimes sparked across playgrounds. Sharp edges, small parts, and choking hazards were everywhere. Safety testing was minimal or non-existent, and warning labels were rare. Kids learned through trial and error, often collecting bruises, scrapes, or minor injuries as part of play. Over time, recalls, age restrictions, and stricter toy safety regulations transformed childhood fun. Play became safer, and parents could relax while their children explored. Yet while toys gained protection, other everyday freedoms remained surprisingly unchecked. And just when you think childhood risk had limits, the next story takes us into streets and parks, where children roamed freely among traffic and hazards that would shock today's parents. Riding bicycles without helmets. Decades ago, children rode bicycles through streets, parks, and lanes with little protection. Helmets were rare, and parents trusted balance, judgment, and common sense. Scrapes, bumps, and falls were treated as ordinary lessons rather than emergencies. Cycling was an adventure fueled by freedom, independence, and minimal supervision. As the years passed, safety campaigns, public awareness, and legislation changed the culture. Helmets became standard, and rules about road use, lights, and reflective clothing transformed cycling into a far safer activity. Today, letting a child ride unprotected feels reckless, almost unthinkable. Yet while headgear became mandatory, Other everyday freedoms once considered normal remained surprisingly dangerous. The next story uncovers a seemingly ordinary habit that carried risks even adults would now find shocking. Public spitting. Morning streets, parks, and train stations were often dotted with careless sprays of spit. Workers, commuters, and even children spat freely, barely noticing the mess or the germs. It was routine, part of everyday life, unremarkable and widely accepted. Hygiene was minimal, and manners were an afterthought. Social discomfort was shrugged off, and no one questioned the habit. Eventually, public awareness of disease, evolving etiquette, and local regulations changed behaviour. Spitting in public became frowned upon and in some areas even illegal. What once felt normal now seems unhygienic and shocking. Yet while streets grew cleaner, other everyday freedoms remained surprisingly unchecked. And just when you think life was safe, the next habit takes us into parks and backyards, where children roamed freely with almost no rules. Polluting factories without controls. Factories once churned out smoke, soot, and chemicals with almost no oversight, blanketing towns in haze and pouring waste into rivers. Owners focused on production over safety or environmental concerns, and local communities accepted thick clouds and foul smells as part of daily life. Air and water pollution were widespread, yet regulations were minimal, and industrial growth went largely unchecked. As awareness of environmental and public health risks grew, governments introduced controls. Factories were required to treat waste, reduce emissions, and improve safety standards. What was once routine and accepted became strictly regulated. Today, the idea of uncontrolled industrial pollution in populated areas feels unimaginable. Yet while industries became cleaner, other everyday freedoms carried hidden dangers. The next habit was so ordinary at the time, its consequences would shock modern observers. Boys and girls sharing school desks freely. Sunlight streamed through dusty classroom windows as children shared desks, elbows brushing, and laughter bouncing across rows. Boys and girls sat together freely, with no strict rules about proximity or decorum. Friendships formed naturally, lessons carried on, and discipline was applied evenly. Teachers rarely noticed the mixing, and parents accepted it as part of the learning experience. Over time, concerns about decorum and evolving school policies led to more structured seating and clearer boundaries. The casual freedom gradually faded, though it never posed real danger. Today, co-educational classrooms are routine and almost invisible. Yet while seating became formalized, other freedoms for children carried risks so extreme that modern parents would be stunned. The next story reveals just how far that recklessness extended. Children wandering alone in town, morning sunlight hit quiet streets as children dashed past parked cars, backpacks bouncing, and scooters rattling over cobblestones. Kids ran errands, visited friends, and explored neighborhoods alone, trusted to navigate traffic and strangers alike. Cars lacked seatbelts, and children often rode unrestrained, perched on laps or sprawled across benches. Accidents happened, but freedom outweighed fear. Communities kept an informal watch, treating risk as part of growing up. Over time, car ownership increased, safety campaigns spread, and laws eventually made child car seats mandatory, ending the era of unsupervised mobility. Today, letting children roam freely or ride without restraints feels reckless. And if that independence seems daring, the next story takes us into workplaces where drinking on the job was not just accepted, it was expected. Self-medication. With prescription drugs, cabinets creaked open to reveal bottles of pills, labels faded, and instructions minimal. Families routinely shared leftover painkillers, sedatives, and antibiotics, trusting advice from neighbours or the local pharmacist. Minor aches, sleepless nights, or persistent coughs were treated at home without consulting a doctor. Risks were overlooked, and convenience took priority over caution. Over time, stricter regulations, prescription monitoring, and public health campaigns transformed this practice. Today, taking prescription medication without professional guidance is considered dangerous, in some cases even illegal. What was once routine now feels reckless. What once seemed normal now feels unthinkable. These days, homes are safer, medicine is controlled, and advice comes from professionals. Looking back, this everyday habit serves as a striking reminder of how much society's standards for safety have changed. These stories remind us how quickly life has changed. What once felt ordinary now seems shocking, even dangerous. Everyday freedoms we took for granted have vanished, replaced by the rules and safety measures. Which of these surprising habits shocked you the most? Share your thoughts and subscribe for more forgotten British history.